Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Alex and I just finished Seveneves by Neal Stephenson and I want to talk about it. I made a post about this book when I originally started reading it and I had some of my subscribers comment that they absolutely loved this story and it gave me great hope that I was going to love it too. Unfortunately, I didn't like it as much as some other people, but if you really loved it, I think that that's fabulous. I will say that there's a lot of great qualities to this book and to Stevenson's writing, but I also found some flaws, we'll say, with it as well, and I will get into all of that in just a second. But first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what this book is about. To put it simply, this is a story about the world ending. So there was some sort of catastrophic agent that ended up hitting the moon and it broke it into 7 large pieces. Well, now those pieces are floating up in space and they're starting to collide with one another. Well, as those collisions continue, it breaks the moon up into smaller and smaller pieces until eventually those pieces start raining down on Earth and will cause something called the hard rain, which will wipe out all life on Earth for about 5,000 years. The only hope that humanity has is to send a very small portion of the Earth's population up into space in the hopes that we can continue the human race and 5,000 years from now we will be able to return to Earth. And I'm not spoiling anything for you because this was in the description of the book, but we know that humanity does make it and is 3 billion members strong 5,000 years in the future, and we get to see what exactly it is that they're returning to. To start on a positive note, I want to say that this is the most scientific sci-fi novel I have ever read. Without a doubt, this is hard science fiction. Neal Stephenson was dedicated to making this story as realistic and plausible as possible if humanity were right now in this moment to have to leave Earth and to try to save some portion of our population. He heavily researched everything from orbital mechanics to structural engineering to mining practices and even nuclear reactors. Now, he is without a doubt an incredibly intelligent man. Nobody could argue that. And it seemed to me like he really tried to think of everything that you or I would be able to think of in terms of possible issues or scenarios that could arise. And I appreciated that and I felt that. And I felt like I also learned a lot while reading the story. So props to him, but I also feel like he was so focused and dedicated to the plausibility and to explaining things that, we'll say, the human element of the book kind of got trampled on a little bit. And what I'm referring to are the sheer number of info dumps in this story, from everything dealing with space travel, space stations, asteroids, even to something that we call the Luke bubbles, etc., etc., etc. I am a huge fan of character-driven stories. I like to see the ways in which people change and adapt over time, and this is definitely a plot-driven story where our characters are kind of just along for the ride, dealing with every situation that is thrown their way. The way this book is structured is we kind of jump in and out of checking in with our various characters to see where they are and how they're doing, but then we immediately dive back into another info dump, which at the beginning of the story honestly felt fine because I was pretty immersed in how exactly humanity was going to get up into space. But as I got towards the end of the book, the writing became very fatiguing and I was honestly ready for the story to be over. The pacing of Seveneves was not at all what I was expecting based off of the book blurb. I thought that it was kind of going to be a half and half, where half of the time was spent with present day people trying to make it up into space and the other half of the book was going to be people rediscovering Earth in the future. This book is 861 pages. 566 of them were dedicated to just present day, like within 5 years of this moment right now. So there's only 300 pages dedicated to the future characters, and you can really feel that disparity because honestly I felt very differently about the future characters than I did the present day characters, and I'll get into that in just a minute. And I believe I understand why Stevenson made the choices that he did. He was trying to reflect that humanity in the present day, we have 2 years to solve this issue of trying to get humans up into space before the world ends. And so you really feel the passage of that amount of time. He wanted to flesh out every detail that he could, but what that results in is a slow, emphasis on slow paced book for the reader. After all, he is exploring everything from our physical limitations of what we are getting up into space and how we are going to get it there, but also the political complications that arise from the fact that a very small portion of people get to go up into space, and the world has to decide who those people are going to be. Which was honestly a really fascinating part of the book, and that was one of the aspects that I did enjoy. Every page of Seveneves is so dense, and it did take me a while to get through this, partially because of the writing, but also partially because life was kind of just kicking my butt a little bit. Now, when Stevenson did take those breaks to focus on the characters, those were my favorite parts of the book, because I love the connections and kind of the politics that is going on between these characters. I love politics and science fiction, I ended up discovering this year, and honestly I wish I would have gotten more of that from this book. That said, the characters in here are quite shallow. We really don't explore them all that much. We don't see them develop or change. They're very one-dimensional, and each one could pretty much be summed up in 3 different descriptors, and that would be the entirety of their character. Nonetheless, I cared about those characters, the ones who were in the first 566 pages. I wanted to know what was going to happen to them, because I knew reading the blurb that we were going to be seeing 5,000 years in the future, and obviously they were all going to be dead, so it's like, what's going to happen to these people who are living right now? What future are they prepping for the generations ahead of them? I'm kind of switching gears a little bit here, but there are 4 diagrams in this story that help with what Stevenson is trying to get you to visualize, which I did appreciate, but I had an issue with one of them, and that was the one at actually the very beginning of the book, which is of Izzy, also known as the International Space Station. I'll just show you that really quick. The issue that I have is not with the diagram itself, it's what iteration of the International Space Station we are seeing. And that is because that image is actually from the very beginning of the book. The International Space Station goes through many iterations over the course of the story, that the more that it was changed and the more technical language was provided, the harder it became for me to visualize what it looked like in that moment. So I wish that we had gotten some more diagrams to kind of show how it was changing over time. Other people would probably view that as a minor gripe, but it was something that personally would have helped me quite a lot. If you or someone you know is of a more engineering or mechanical mindset, I believe that they would probably enjoy this book more than I did. That's just because I had a difficult time visualizing things, but other people don't necessarily have those issues, or they don't mind if their mental representation is different than whatever the author intended. Me, I try really hard to envision things exactly the way that the author is describing them, and I felt like in some cases I just couldn't do that, so that was kind of a hindrance for me. I really enjoyed when Stevenson threw in his little tidbits of humor. His sense of humor is very dry, which is my sense of humor, and he had some of these really great one-liners that were scattered throughout the book, and he would sometimes leave paragraphs ending on a kind of joke, and those were moments that I really enjoyed. I thought that was a lot of fun. The reveal of how we learn where the title of this book comes from, I thought was really surprising, and I thought it was exceptionally well done, and it was really cool. It was something that I wasn't expecting, and here is where my controversial opinion will probably come in for people who love this book. I actually wish that the story had ended there. I thought the ending of the first section on page 566 was a great kind of cap to the story. It very easily could have ended there. I would have preferred a kind of cliffhanger ending, which normally I wouldn't say that, but I thought that it was kind of wrapped up in such a way that I could have imagined what would have happened to humanity, and to me that would have been more interesting than the actual ending that we got. There is no gradual shift from modern day humans to 5,000 years in the future. It literally just cuts from one to the next, and I think that that was a detriment to the story. Why? Because it gave Stevenson another excuse to tell instead of show. We had paragraphs and paragraphs, pages and pages of backstory that he was filling in of those missing 5,000 years, instead of just giving us a chance to experience it ourselves by giving us other characters in those different time periods, which I personally would have thought was a lot better. But then again, I also enjoy character-driven stories. The characters were my favorite part. And if he felt like he had to show something else, I personally, instead of the people up in orbit and learning what happened to them, I would have preferred an entire section where we just look at the people who are left on Earth. And if you know, you know. And if you are somebody who understands what I'm talking about, I just want to say that I was in no way surprised by Stevenson's reveals, because he telegraphed them so heavily over the course of the first section of the book. So that to me was really disappointing, because I felt like the last 300 pages was kind of a waste. I mean, you could say that it wrapped it up nicely and it was good to finally have some sort of answer, but I honestly would have preferred to see things from we'll say a different perspective than the ones that we got. The only readers for this book who would have found the ending surprising are those who were not paying attention to anything in the first section of the book. And that leads me to another key difference between the two sections, meaning like present and future, is that the present section is meant to be plausible, it's meant to be science-based, it's meant to look at what could we do right now, versus 5,000 years in the future, which is just complete speculative fiction. It's total science fiction, which really gave this book kind of an odd tone between the two different parts, and I felt almost like I was reading two different books, which was something that I also didn't really enjoy. And because we spend less time with those future characters, I will also say I didn't care nearly as much about them as I did what I would call the original cast, which ultimately meant that page 567 onward for me just felt like a slog, and on top of that it felt like an unnecessary slog, which I feel really bad for saying that because of how highly regarded this book is. On average, it has a 4-star rating on Goodreads. The bulk of people who have reviewed this gave it 4 stars. The next highest is 5 stars. I am giving this a 3. I'm essentially saying that this is a solid read, but it's not one that I would recommend except in very specific circumstances. Again, maybe for somebody who has that kind of engineering, mechanical, very hard science fiction mindset, I would tell them that maybe they would enjoy this. But under normal circumstances, I wouldn't recommend it, and I also don't think that I'll ever probably reread this. If you have read this book, please let me know your thoughts and feelings down below, even if you totally disagree with me, and that would be perfectly fine. I don't mind if you tell me that you really loved it, even though I didn't as much. And if you are somebody who might be interested or thinking about reading this, I would love to hear from you as well. And with that, as always, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, that you all stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time.